welcome to this week's episode of Opera Maine. I'm your host, Robert Mellon. It's important for me to start this episode by explaining what exactly goes into the preparation a singer has before they step on the operatic stage. Many singers acquire a bachelor's degree, followed by a master's degree. Once they leave graduate school, many singers begin the arduous task of applying for young artist programs. And while young artist programs help to promote a singer and move them along in their career, constant vocal study continues to happen. Much like doctors and lawyers continue to hone their skills, singers very much have to go through years and years of training, getting all these muscles to work together in sync. My guest today, Maeve Höglund, much like myself, has been taking voice lessons since the day they started school to the present day. Maeve has sung all over the United States, including the Lyric Opera of Kansas City, Opera Philadelphia, On-Site Opera, Carnegie Hall, and recently she just signed a contract with the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. I'm very excited to have Maeve on this week to talk about the importance of a voice teacher. I hope you enjoy. And I'd like to welcome Maeve. Many of you may recognize her from her wonderful performances in 2018's Marriage of Figaro as Susanna and in 2016 as Frasquita in Carmen. What part does the voice lesson play in your preparation for a role now?
The biggest thing is that we have built-in forgetters. It's just a part of the process. You know, if without a certain amount of like constant discipline and constant guidance through our trusted sources, parts of our brain kind of like untie certain habits. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that these habits can't be overcome and rewired. It's just that then other old habits pop up. So really, again, I always emphasize with people I work with, and anytime I talk about it, is we're always a student. And if there's any time that you don't want to be a student, to me, it's not even really worth pursuing anything, because there's always a place where we can learn. There's always somewhere else we can master. Mm-hmm. And so in role preparation, it's like the perfect opportunity to then put all the knowledge and the practice and the implementation from your prior lessons into a meat of a role that can be something that is like running a marathon. I mean, it literally is endurance. It's required, the endurance of energy is required, being able to really, map out kind of like, where you're going to go all in with energy and then where you're going to pull back, and being able to explore that in your lessons and find where the pieces that, you're still catching, old habits, allows you to kind of like what I call, it's like you're just like slowly sanding over those corners. So then when you get to the rehearsal period, then it's about playing and exploration. Because to me, the rehearsal period is as essential as actual performances. Because as you know, we do like 80% work and then 20% performance.
And that's the 20% is what we're paid for. Everything before that, we didn't see a dime for.
Right. Exactly. So, it's an important investment for the ultimate reward of being able to like really gift an experience such as what we get to do in opera.
were you always accepting of someone saying to you, whether it was your voice teacher or a coach, that that doesn't sound right? Or did did that mature over time that you were able to accept that and kind of build on, okay, I need to change something?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, I think it was over time. And actually, it's funny because this actually catapulted another piece of work that I do in my life towards coaching people in their inner voice and their kind of inner compass, and really being able to get into contact about your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, that's the inner game of how to be a singer or any sort of like master of any craft, is really being able to understand, wow, I'm actually the one who knows what's right and knows what I need to do next, but also being humble enough to accept direction. And that can be so tricky because at times it can be like, no, 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 I know what I need and this is what I need. Or it can be, I have no idea what I'm doing, please help me, out of desperate measures.
Yep.
And then perhaps you take the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. So it has been this fine balance of, I guess from my experience, I've always been really fortunate in being led by really good mentors, really good teachers. I had a really good solid teacher when I was, in high school, who was really soft with technique, didn't push my voice. There wasn't any sort of, here, you have to learn 5 gajillion operas before you're 18.
Yeah.
It was really like a very slow and paced technical foundation. And then when things somewhat increased in college, it really was due to my own internal pressure around, I had to do something. Like I had to be singing an opera. I had to be doing a young artist program. I had to be, singing it with a company. It was due to my own pressure that I actually began to make wrong choices.
Gotcha.
And I say that in terms of switching teachers or, quitting altogether or, feeling like I was failing, which in turn I wasn't. It was just that I wasn't necessarily trusting, the step in the process, or the steps and the process toward, developing the new version of my instrument. Because as singers, it's our bodies are maturing, they're developing, they're growing, they're, moving into different maturity or maturation phases inside the instrument itself. So it's different than being a cellist or a trumpet player or a pianist, right?
How crucial, Maeve, would you say patience is in all of this? Is that probably outside of the whole technical, I'm learning how to sing, I'm learning how to use the musculature properly, I'm learning how to use the breath. If there's one thing outside of that is patience the biggest lesson to learn from this?
Totally.
It's mind-blowing to me, because I have so many friends that have gotten to a point in their career, and I think you and I both feel the same way about this, where they don't feel taking voice lessons anymore is important, that they've almost figured it all out, or that they have no more to learn, which I think is a very scary place to be, because we're both in the same camp, where there's always something to learn, there's always something to fix, there's always something to make better. But aside from that, I also see folks giving up way too soon, because they feel, especially for sopranos, women specifically, I think you all have it the hardest. Folks will stop at 28 because they feel like they're getting too old and they haven't mastered their technique enough to actually take that next step in. I mean, what was it for you that said, no, age is not an element. I'm not putting that as a blocker. I'm keeping on the track and I'm staying true to what I believe is going to take me to the next level.
That's such a great question, Bobby. I mean, I think what it comes down to is, whose voice are you following? Are you following your own voice? Are you following the voice of your parents, your mentors, your friends, your community members, society? When it comes down to it, what's really important, because each and every individual are, living with themselves. They're living with their mistakes and their successes. So I think at the end of the day, one has to really lean into, again, this like your own internal guidance system. And what can be really detrimental at times is that it comes in and it like allows for all the other dialogues to like influence your decision or influence what's right or what's wrong. And I think, to be honest, it's something that's really plagued a lot of people in a lot of different ways, not just our industry. And to me, it comes down to patience and resiliency. So if there's a sense that you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain point, that's just going to set you up for failure, right? Because life happens, and life is a curvy road as opposed to a straight incline.
Yeah.
And if one can't build a sense of, I'm going to do this no matter what, then you do allow yourself to be vulnerable to outside influences. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be guided.
Right. At what point in your study did you feel that you were finally at a point where you can go out and audition confidently or sing well enough to where you didn't walk off stage at the end of the night and worry about what the product was?
Well, I'll preface that answer with saying that when I came to our teacher, I took myself completely off of the audition market. I stopped auditioning. I didn't do any competitions. I didn't sing in any productions. I was absolutely dedicated strictly to my study and building pieces of my foundation that were still missing. And the thing is actually it's quite simple. And I think a lot of people make it way more difficult. It's just about allowing for yourself to dedicate a specific amount of time to really get solid in your body, to really get solid in the connection of your breath. And, I am friends with lots of dancers and wind instrument musicians. They spend decades doing this and crafting that that consistent that we all share, which is the breath. And, certainly as opera singers, breath support for our instruments. And it's something that keeps us really, really steady on the beam. And so for me, it was when I finally realized that I wasn't relying enough on my body. I was relying too much on my mind, that things began to shift. And I will say that this was a huge, huge hurdle I had to get over because my mind had been running the show for many years. My mind was just like this, that, the other, just this, that, the other. And this, of course, was coming from me externally, but it was also something I was allowing to absorb into my process, as opposed to almost channeling a kind of meditative state. So when I started getting on to a place where I could actually, audition again and use the tools I had learned, it became a way more grounded experience where I knew that I could trust the breath to do what it needed to do. It would spin the sound, it would move the tone, and also from untying certain knots and crutches that I had been using for years, it became as natural as you and I just speaking this conversation. That is when things really shifted.
Do you do any teaching yourself? Is it something you would want to do? And do you ever see yourself doing it after you after you've completed your role as a singer in life?
So teaching hasn't been something that I've ever really plugged very consistently into, but as of late, I have found that people have come to me wanting to learn, how I've been able to build the career I've been able to build, how my singing is very solid. And so I do have a few students and ones that are really dedicated to following the system that I have put in place for myself.
another fun thing too. I loved being on stage with you during Figaro because I used to do, I don't know if you remember this, but I used to hold your hand in weird ways while we were on stage, right? It used to really annoy you, and you'd like slap my hand and go, don't do that, right? And I go, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot, right? I did it on purpose every single time. Like I was, at that point, I was just trying to get under your skin and drive you crazy.
I love working with you, Bobby. It's so much fun. And you know what? That's like, I love that you bring up these stories because these are the things that really give meaning to what we do. And, you know, even if whoever's listening or watching to this isn't an opera singer, but they're a lover of opera or just a lover of art,
Mm-hmm.
it's really about like what we get to create on this planet and this earth and this time, you know, and what we get to explore and how we get to enjoy it with each other. You know, whether you're actually the performer in the process or you're the audience member that's actually getting to receive the performance, it's so much about like enjoyment and fun and celebration, and also, you know, being able to transmit the journey, right? Because us up on that stage is years and years and years of preparation.
Yeah.
And there's an appreciation of the transaction that I think takes place both with colleagues and with the audience that allows for us to like connect in our own humanity. You know, it gets to connect in our own experience and journey. And though someone might not have the same journey as you and I, you know, they have their own journey and they can relate through, you know, the stories that we tell.
Well, Maeve, I want to thank you so much for sitting with me today and chatting a little bit. I think people are really going to enjoy this. And from everybody in Maine, we hope to see you up there again soon.
Thanks for having me, Bobby.
All right, bye. And that'll do it for this week's episode. Thanks to Maeve Höglund for joining us. Join us next week when I have set and lighting designer and two-time Tony Award winner Chris Ackerlin on the program. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Opera Maine. To play us out this week, here's a clip from Act 2 of Le Nozze di Figaro, where Maeve Höglund as Susanna sings Venite.